But last year has been really a shock beyond shocks because of the continuous live stream of this genocide, this continuous genocide that doesn't seem to stop or cease day or night, 24/7. The Ummah has had many shocks over the course of decades. And the biggest shock, of course, is it gave up its authority and relinquished its dignity of being the leading nation governed by a single imam. And this is where the Ummah is right now. They've realized that all the screaming, all the wailing, all the complaining, all of that is not going to do anything. Syria is critically important. And we have to recognize that everything that has occurred and everything that has happened, this was pre-planned. And there is no indication right now to say that this was not with the blessing of Western powers. Now, the question about the lands that these usurpers have taken or continue to take, there'll be time for that. That's not the priority right now. The priority right now is to build a state in Syria. And I think if we think of something in 2025, we want to achieve this.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Welcome to the Muslim Podcaster Show. I'm your host Majid, and today I'm joined by a very special guest, no other than Ustad Hema Luqman. Assalamu alaikum, bro, and welcome to the show.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Thank you for inviting me again. It's a pleasure always to see you.
MashaAllah, of course. To be honest with you, it's been a long time coming, especially since the last podcast we recorded. I had a lot of feedback, and alhamdulillah, people were asking me when is Ustad Hema coming back on. So I know you're a very busy guy, so alhamdulillah, it's timely because there's loads to discuss and loads to get your input on and your insight. But other than that, have you been keeping well?
Yeah, alhamdulillah, everything's good. And always thinking of this ummah and the engagement to the ummah and thinking about where elevation for this ummah is, how we can be an instrument or a cog in the wheel, as they say. Inshallah ta'ala.
Inshallah, bro. But listen, let's get into the topic of discussion. As you know, Brother Hema, we are getting to the end, the close of 2024, and as an ummah, it's been an eventful year. There's loads that's happened, and that is still happening. So I thought no one better than yourself really to maybe we can discuss. I don't really want to call it a review of 2024, but I think it might be something on those lines, just to see whether, from an Islamic, from a political, spiritual point of view, how this year 2024 has been for the Ummah, for Islam, and maybe we can have some sort of not prediction is the wrong word, but at least some sort of analysis or some sort of foresight into what we should expect in 2025, because the patterns are all there. Nothing happens, in a vacuum. There's no coincidence as to what we're seeing happening. So I'm sure we can be in a good position to kind of like analyze and discuss, what to look forward to in the coming year. But in terms of 2024, bro, I'll give you the floor really. What are the sort of key highlights, key takeaways, key events, that come to mind when we think of 2024?
I think without a doubt, nobody can talk about 2024 without mentioning Gaza and the wound in the Ummah's heart, in the Ummah's soul, and that continues to bleed. And we see our brothers, we see our sisters, we see our children, we see our mothers, we see our fathers struggling, and the Ummah is struggling with it. And for a number of reasons, which we'll come to. We also cannot let go of let's say, the quietly unreported war in Sudan be forgotten. There are millions of people there who are going hungry in a country that is known or a land that is known as the basket of Africa in terms of its food and abundance of wealth. Um, the second biggest river in the world after the Amazon, flowing through it. Um, we can also not forget about the anguish for weeks upon weeks of what was happening in Bangladesh, and the challenges there, which is still continuing. And there is, of course, Yemen, and the quiet war there that's been frozen for reasons that benefit the powers there, the Americans and their stooges, the UAE and the Saudis. The And then now Syria and what has happened in Syria, which a lot of people are looking at as maybe glad tidings for the Ummah. But again, we will go into this and we will recognize many aspects of it that we need to look beyond the headlines. We need to look beyond the emotions. And if the Ummah is going to find its way back to kuntum khayra ummatin ukhrijat linnas, that you were and are and continue to be the best ummah that has been created for humanity, then the ummah needs to find its compass again. And that compass is La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah. That's what points to true north for the ummah. And that's what we need to do. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam in Mecca, when he was given the opportunity to be a king, to be married to the best women, to be given wealth beyond imagination, to be given status and position, but to stop attacking the idols and stop attacking the corrupt state and stop attacking the authority and to stop destabilizing the de facto ruling system. He said no. He said, sun in my right, the moon in my left. To give this up, I will not give it until my neck is gone. This is the state. This is who we are, and we need to look back into it. So, in summary, this is what 2024 brought. It brought a lot of pain. Towards the end, it brought a breeze of hope. But in the midst of all of that, there's a lot to discuss.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. So, I mean, like you said, one thing that cannot be ignored is what's happening in Gaza. So, in terms of, when we last spoke as well, and we spoke about the great qualities of the people of Gaza, and we spoke about, Gaza being a furqan, al-furqan for, differentiates the right from the wrong, from the good to evil, from evil. And, I can't remember how long that was ago, but now in terms of timescales, you're talking October 2023, and now it's December 2024. And what we've seen in Gaza is something which, you know, is you would read in like medieval stories in terms of what they've done to Gaza, what they're continuing to do in North Gaza. There's reports, that are being released where babies are dying, because they're being frozen to death.
Yes.
This is the reality that we're seeing. So, in terms of a year on, um, what's your thoughts on this, or also in terms of the interaction you're having with people? Has Gaza become something of the lost story? Has the Ummah become tired of it? And I don't mean that in a bad way, but I just mean have become numb to it, lethargic. Then we've had the what's happening in Syria, like you said, bring a breeze of hope. And nowadays, especially the people I'm speaking to generally, the discussion is about Syria, but we know what's happening in Gaza.
Mm.
Um, so what's your thoughts on that, bro? Because you're talking about a year of genocide,
Yeah.
and it's ongoing, it's continuing,
Yes.
but it doesn't seem that it's coming to an end anytime soon. And one last thing before I bring you in is also the element of, the resistance. How what we've seen in 2024 is through certain maneuvers and through the collusion. We can see what happened with Hezbollah. We can see, the fallout in terms of what happened with Iran. And almost it could feel like now the people of Gaza, the resistance fighters there, have been left to their own devices or just now on their own, and it feels like anything that the Zionists want to take from there or what sort of solution they want, it's in their sight. So, yes, we said this is a Furqan, but um, what's your take on that in terms of where are we now and what's going to happen?
So let me start to kind of untangle all of this. There's so much, mashallah, you put in there. So let's talk about this. The Ummah has had many shocks over the course of decades. And the biggest shock, of course, is it gave up its authority and relinquished its dignity of being the leading nation governed by a single imam. The Sultanate, the Uthmani Sultan Abdul Hamid was the last of the sultans. He was the shield whom protects and behind which we fight. And he is the last one to have said, I will not give up Palestine, regardless of what you do. I know what you're planning. I know how much you want to pay. I know how much wealth you have, but it's not mine. It belongs to the Ummah. I am not going to give it up to anyone. Now, violent shocks and deep crises that affect societies, they ignite emotion. The first thing that they hit is the people's emotions. And we could see that. You don't need, we've all been there. We've seen Instagram, we've seen YouTube, we've seen TikTok, we've seen Twitter, people crying, people wailing. It's not only Muslims. We're talking about non-Muslims. People crying about babies, people crying about women, people crying about children, people everywhere. We've seen all of that. Normally, emotions should awaken thoughts. Now, that's what normally should happen. But last year has been really a shock beyond shocks because of the continuous live stream of this genocide, this continuous genocide that doesn't seem to stop or cease day or night, 24/7. I mean, imagine that you've got people who are actually committing crimes, have their own unique channel in which they actually beam what they're doing to others. That is just beyond human capability to understand or to accept. Massive destruction. We're watching famine. We're watching rape. We're watching people living in fear. We're watching brutality, as you mentioned. I mean, in the last few days, they've mentioned several cases of infants that have died because of hypothermia. And in these unstable situations, in the face of shocks, if you kind of think about in management models like the Kubler-Ross model, where people kind of go from they go from shock then to denial. Not my problem. I'm going to blame others. I don't get it. I don't like it. I don't want to know. To negotiation and bargaining. There's a lot of anger. There's a lot of fear. There's a lot of resistance. Um, Being active against those who you think you're blaming for the case. And we've seen many movements in the streets of Amman, in Jordan. We've seen them even in the West Bank until they quelled it. We've seen it in Egypt. We've seen it in many other places. And what we have got to think about is that you then get to kind of like you're there, you just kind of go down, you get down to the trough, to the bottom. You're in depression. And this is where the Ummah is right now. They've gone through all that. They've realized that they really, all the screaming, all the wailing, all the complaining, all of that is not going to do anything. It may just shake, it may scare the living daylights out of the regimes and the systems, but they're not going to say, oh, yeah, yeah, okay, 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 we love you, we're going to go and do something about it. They're not, because they know, and until now, the Ummah hasn't shown them that the Ummah has the authority. At the moment, they're relying on their authority from external forces. They're relying on Jordan is basically, and the regime in Jordan is nothing but a protection racket for the usurping entity. That's all what it is. That's all what it's always been. And what they're trying to do with Syria now is to do another one. So where the Ummah now is, two things can happen in this trough, in this depression, is that you could be open to, or you could seek new ideas and new avenues. So you're actually exploring what to do. So the Ummah is trying to explore, what can we do? Where can we go? The 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 problem is it's very emotional. So they haven't reached the level where they need to think, okay, put the emotion to the side. Let's think intellectually into the causes and effects of that. The causes and effects are the regimes. These regimes are nothing but subcontractors to the West. They need to be removed. If they're not removed, nothing's going to happen. None of them. Rasulullah ﷺ already showed this, demonstrated this for 13 years. Leave Rasulullah ﷺ aside. Nabi Allah Nuh, Nabi Allah Ibrahim, Nabi Allah Musa, Nabi Allah Isa, Shu'aib, Hud, Saleh, Idris, who else? Yahya, Zakaria. They all went through the same thing, through the same issues and challenges. Authority never gives up. There is way too much involved in terms of self-interest that they're going to say, oh, yeah, yeah, okay, 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 we hear you. They don't listen to their own people here, let alone allowing some backward third world people to decide what to do for themselves, as they call us backward. The Ummah is in its uprisings, in its ability, it's trying to communicate this anger, trying to communicate its emotion. But what it needs to do is to understand there's a big difference between wishful thinking and imposing your will. The Ummah hasn't got there yet. The Ummah is starting like a little child to recognize, oh, we could do things. You know, like a little child, all of a sudden, I can walk now. I can cause chaos at home. The Ummah is in those first baby steps. I can grab this, I can grab that, I can see what's on top of the table. I could, I could reach for things. The Ummah is now starting at that level to actually recognize that, but it's still wishful. It's still, it hasn't reached that intellectual level where the Ummah declares a position, a desired position, a demand to achieve something. That we haven't got there yet. The will, once you have a will, your whole vital energy goes with it. Everything that you live for becomes directed by that will, the will to change. Because there is a to be situation, a vision that you've seen, and I want to get there. Like people will move, they say move heaven and earth and whatever they've got some silly statements in the West, but they would move anything to achieve what they want to achieve. Right? Somebody might, work 3 jobs to be able to get enough money to buy a car or buy a house or whatever. So our vital energy has to come from within us. That this is, look, the only way for us to survive as an ummah, because we are coming to a situation now where if we continue down this path, there will be no ummah. We will be nothing but just another number in the total number of population. And the our feelings have to now move us, to what we need to do with these feelings and these emotions that we have is they've got to be controlled by the thought that we carry, that this is what the ummah needs to be. The ummah خير أمة أخرجت للناس. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وكنتم لتكونوا شهداء على الناس, that you will be witnesses upon people, upon all of the nations. How could we be witnesses to anybody right now? So in the absence of having La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah being the foundation for any vision, for any thought, then the emotions and the feelings we have can be misdirected towards achieving any consensus or finding, oh, just stop the killing. It's gone down to the level of just stop the killing. We don't want to see any more killing. Please stop it. That's where we got to now. So what we've turned into now is this unproductive action. We're not going to produce anything. All what we want now is for the killing to stop. So we have to then, go back, get our thinking together in terms of what we want to achieve, how we're going to set to achieve it. And then the road towards that is going to be extremely and incredibly difficult. Nobody says it's not going to be. Nobody says that, okay, now we've got the will, that means everything is going to happen. No, the sky is not going to rain. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when he sent the angels to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam in Badr, he sent them down after Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam had prepared the people for jihad. He prepared them. He took the opinion of the Sahaba of where to go and where not to do, and how to organize the rows of the mujahideen. So he took all of the necessary steps to be done. And he went and made the dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala until Abu Bakr as-Siddiq took back his robe and put it back on him. And he said, Ya Rasulullah, Allah will make you victorious. Take it easy on yourself. It's enough. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, then the ayat comes that he sent you 5,000 angels to fight with you. And the same with al-Khandaq. Didn't send the winds first. Didn't send the cold first. Didn't send the fear into their hearts first. No, the Sahaba, they took the opinion, they agreed upon what to do. Rasulullah ﷺ led them, they dug the trench, etc. So all of that is that we have to, we speak about tawakkul, and many people talk about tawakkul to Allah, tawakkul to Allah. Have you really put your trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? What have you done to actually bring about from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala the powers of this universe to come to your aid and to your guidance and to your support, that you should be awarded these? So this is what we need to think. What we have to remember then also is that, so I don't want to make this too long of a narrative on this area, but what we have to remember is that in doing all of this, we also, what we got to understand is that during this time also, so the shock and denial of the ummah, etc., and all of that, where we're in the trough, we're in the depression now. But the depression is also not bad. Huh? Don't think about it as a depression, as in the kind of Western idea of depression and visit the GP and get pop some tablets. That's not what we do in Islam. But the key thing about it, and not to mock depression, etc., because it is a fact, but the evidence is in the Quran. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Shifa'un lima fi sudur. Quran is shifa. And Quran, of course, is the thoughts and ideas of Islam are all there. Understanding that the risk is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that we will die at the time that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, and that Allah will take care of us. So all of these things are healers of these issues. Now, so that's one angle to it. The other angle to it is, of course, is that we are seeing right now a massive clash within the West from those who actually held the foundational values of the international world order as you know, the values of freedom, the values of human dignity, the you know the issues around human rights, all of those aspects that were foundations, they're starting to question themselves. You see many people, the edifice, their values that they built and marketed and sold this international order to the whole world, their marketing package has unraveled. The world now sees it for what it is. Forget about the third world, forget about people outside the West. I'm going to park anybody outside the West. And by the West, you're talking about not just about Western Europe and the US, but you're talking about others who adopt the values of the West. Whether it is Japan, whether it's Korea, whether it's India, whether all of those people, Australia, etc., all of them, they know, and if you listen carefully to what they're commentating, what they're saying, and you're talking about ex-prime ministers. We're not talking about any easy people. And I'm not talking about, we're not talking about Ireland or Norway or Spain, right? Who are the anomalies in this whole order. But you're talking about ex-French prime ministers. You're talking about German senior lawyers, of constitutional lawyers, who actually work for federal government institutions, are actually now saying, why did I study law? If it doesn't mean anything, why did I spend all these years becoming a lawyer? When you see the crime that is being committed all the way back to the Treaty of Versailles, and how they lied and maneuvered it to incorporate this right of Jews to a state when they didn't have the right to do it. So you listen to ex-soldiers, you listen to UN staff and rapporteurs and all of them. They know that that one criminal state called the United States of America has basically frozen all of the international world order for one purpose only, which is to protect and secure the usurping entities' safety and existence. Nothing means anything, only its existence, because of one reason only, in that this entity is the advanced military and cultural base, the spearhead into the heart of the Ummah. That's the only reason. Which tells us two things. Tells us that the Ummah is starting to agitate and kind of feel, but it's unsure of what it is that it's looking for. It's still struggling with what it is it wants to do, outside a group of certain people who have already kind of reached that. But I'm talking about the Ummah in its generality. Yes, the Ummah wants Islam, but they're not really sure what is this Islam. And we saw that when, as soon as a few brothers with beards, freed Syria, they thought, Allah Akbar, that's it. The second thing, of course, it teaches us and has shown us truly that the West is nothing but a fake. And that this whole international world order is nothing but a gimmick and it reminds me of only fools and horses, all their fake sales and the fake products that they're doing. That's what it is. And whilst at the same, if we think about it, we think about what is the world order in Islam as revealed by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, for all the way from the beginning, from La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah. But if you look at one surah where actually it is the declaration of the new world order under Islam, which is Surah Bara'ah. That surah, if you read it and carefully read it, and the way that when it was revealed, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala ordered Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam to read it out loud at Hajj to everybody so they can hear it and understand it. Yes, there were milestones to get to that, but a declaration of a new world order doesn't actually happen before you have it. Yeah, you build it over a number of decades and then you announce it. So that to me generally is where we're at, and where we're and coming now towards the end of this year towards Syria. Syria has a massive opportunity, and an opportunity which, if the brothers in Syria act with integrity and act with consciousness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they can establish something that is unseen. And for we haven't seen it because none of us were there when Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam established Medina. So this will be the re-establishment of Islam as a way of life. And we know that from Damascus, the Islam, whether it was Imam Ibn Taymiyyah, whether it was Imam Rajab um, or Ibn Asakir, so many of the great scholars of Islam, and how the lands beyond the two rivers, talking about Khorasan, etc., and beyond that, Al-Andalus, North Africa, how all of these lands were the obstacles against the emancipation of humanity were removed. Sayyid Qutb rahmatullah alayh says in his tafsir of Surah Al-Anfal, beautiful piece. Actually, he wrote something about 13 pages about this topic, just at the beginning of Surah Al-Anfal to explain what it is. And he said, look, if anybody ever thinks that Islam was about blood, then remember this: jihad was nothing but to remove the barriers against other humans hearing the truth. And that's the summary of what he said. That's what it is. It's not about destruction. It is not about killing. It's not about murder. It's not about any of those aspects, because we're prohibited from even cutting a tree down. So the world order is we are the Ummah is starting to recognize how much power it has, but it hasn't really intellectually moved within the Ummah as the body of the Ummah for the Ummah to exert its will. It's still very emotional.
In terms of the will that you mentioned, because obviously you're saying Ummah, you're not restricting it to any geographical area. Some would argue actually the Muslims surrounding Palestine have more responsibility, but let's just keep it general, right? So you mentioned the will, and we'll get to Syria afterwards. But in terms of Gaza, would you not say that you can have will, however, if you don't know what you're trying to achieve, then that will is never going to get you to the right place anyway. So, I mean, do you think in a year, I mean, with your discussions, with what you're seeing on Arab TV or the news channels and so on, um, do you think that Muslims have kind of like concluded now what the actual solution is now? Um, I you know I think one thing is for sure, the people I interact with, they know that the rulers are a big part of the problem.
Oh yeah.
But in terms of like their role and for them to do what they need to do you think that's kind of clear in people's minds?
I don't think so yet. I think you see, the will may be there, or they recognize they have the will now, but it's still influenced by many corrupt thoughts and ideas, such as, which way do we go? Do we go democracy? Do we go, is it, let's have a revolution. Let's do all of that. Look, Islam is one thing, one concept of life that you cannot implement by the sword. The people must want it because what it actually brings to you is this submission to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You have to submit all your desires and all of your needs and subjugate yourself in totality, immerse it for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's sake. Are we there yet? As an ummah, I don't think so.
Yeah.
Maybe individually, maybe certain people, yes. Maybe certain areas, maybe. But the fact is, we have not reached that level. And it doesn't have to be every single one, but it has to be generally that is the driving force within society. So within society, people are saying, no, we're only going to have relations in according to Islam. Our interests are only going to be governed by Islam. Not that there won't be any hypocrites. Of course, there will always be hypocrites. They were there during the days of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. They will be there till the day of judgment. We know that. And this battle between haqq and batil will continue to be that. Now, what we need to understand is that exerting your will, first thing, you need to have this clear idea that drives the will. So this clarity of thought, clarity of idea needs to drive the will, which then will exert its influence on your emotion and therefore then calm you down in understanding all kinds of aspects about rizq, about ajal, etc. Where the ummah is now, if you want to kind of feel the pulse is the ummah is starting to recognize where it's gone wrong, and it has actually understood now who stands with the truth and who does not. So that's a major thing. I don't think a year ago we could have said that, because there was a lot of debate between people. No, maybe no, okay, you come on, you're being a bit too harsh on them. You're being too hard on the Saudis or on Sisi or on Bin Zayed, etc. and all that. You guys want angels to come down from the sky. That's what we were being told. But now that they've seen them for who they are and what they are, the ummah can, yes, they're shocked. Yes, they're depressed now, but they actually recognize them for who they are. And that's why the fact is how we've let down our brothers and sisters in Gaza, beyond any doubt. And I was having this discussion with some brothers, and I said, look, I don't really fear for the people of Gaza. They are with Allah. I fear for ourselves. My fear is for myself and for others that I know. What have we done for them? And I said, look, I said, I was saying it to myself also, remind myself and others, is that Istita'a, capability, is only between you and Allah. Nobody knows this but you and Allah. And when the time comes and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, اقرأ كتابك كفى بنفسك اليوم عليك حسيبا, read your book. You are the sufficient witness upon yourself. What are you
Subhanallah.
going to say then?
Subhanallah.
Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in another ayah, يكذبون على أنفسهم. They're lying to themselves in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So the ummah needs to actually wake up and recognize that, look, have you done what you could have or have the ability to do?
I think that's a fair question. But just to add to that as well, Brother Hema, is that we say, what have we done for the people of Gaza? But ultimately, the question really is, what have we done for ourselves?
Yes.
Because when we're going to be questioned, ultimately, like you said, the people of Gaza, what is going to happen to them is going to happen to them. Their account is with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But when you're going to be asked about your capability, were you able to speak? Were you
Yep.
able to teach? You know,
Yep.
were you worried about your wealth or
Yep.
your positions? And that's something which only that, like you said, is a really interesting point you make. Deep down, because you can always try to trick someone to believe that you couldn't do something. And they might say, yeah, fine, I have no reason to doubt you. But it's not hidden between you and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
Exactly. And you add to that, there are a significant number of us who have instruments under their disposal, but they're more worried about the counters of how many likes they have got and how many followers that they've got, that they actually restrict themselves from saying the truth or try to be very conservative with what they say and what they don't say, fearing that I'll lose my platform and that's not good. Who gave you the platform to start with? Is that you or Allah? This is a complete misreading for who gave you that capability? Who gave you that status? You think you created it yourself? And that comes down to, astaghfirullah al-azim. This is shirk al-asghar, by the way.
Mm.
This is what is meant by the last ayah of Surah Al-Kahf, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala warns, وَلَا تُشْرِكُوا بِاللَّهِ شَيْئًا. And they said, well, we don't have any idols. We're not going to shirk. He says, no, but I fear for you that somebody would say, I do jihad because I want people to see me doing jihad. I will give this money because I want people to see me give this money. I want to be giving that khutbah because people can say, wow, what a guy, what a brother, what a sheikh, look at his eloquence. Now, that is shirk. That's what Rasulullah ﷺ said to the Sahaba. They said, he found them and he said, what are you doing at this time of night? They said, we were talking about the Dajjal. He says, you want to hear what I fear for you more than a Dajjal? And they said, what, Ya Rasulullah? And then he told them this.
Subhanallah.
So the brothers, we have to remember that the people of knowledge, the people of eloquence, the people who have the strength to speak out, the people who have the position to speak out, we have to remember that the duty upon them is more significant than what is on the normal member of the ummah. The the ulama, the people of knowledge, the people who gave them, sometimes I think to myself that, people want to, want to gain this, want to understand this, I want to do this. But that means that Allah has given you something and He's going to ask you about it. The same way Allah is going to ask the people who has given them wealth, what have you done with your wealth? Allah is going to ask you, I've given you knowledge, what have you done with it? I gave you the ability to lead people. And you have all of these people around you who come to you, who flock to you. What have you ever said to them? Or were you so scared that they're gonna, oh, I don't like him anymore. He's a fundamentalist. Is that what you're worried about? Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was called a fundamentalist. Uh-huh. They called him more. Sahir and Majnoon. They insulted Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They said he has a son. So the ulama, the people of knowledge, the people of this capability, of the skill, who have these platforms, who have the capability, they have to be at the forefront for change. At the forefront of change. And they should not be dragged into being the microphones or the megaphones for authority and for the people, the governments and the Arab leaders and the Muslim leaders, who has been proven now that they're nothing but subcontractors to Taghut. And they defend, they protect all of the thoughts of the West, so they can bring us closer. Closer to what? Closer to hell. You're supposed to lead us to Jannah, not to hell. So what we need to understand is that there's a political narrative here now, and it's going to get stronger, and it's become more evident as we go along over the next few months and next years, is that in their effort to break down Islam, return it to basically just a spiritual idea, remove all of the ahkam of Sharia, and say, well, no, you can't apply any of that. You have to apply the law of the land. And to try to drive them away from holding the capitalist system to account. There is only the Ummah left. There's nobody else left. And the duty for those who recognize who we are and what we are, that is the duty of the people of knowledge, to explain it to the Ummah, to explain it from the grassroots up. Who you are. This is your identity. You are the ones who are going to be shuhada, witnesses. That means you hold people accountable, regardless of what may happen. Look at Imam Ahmad, rahmatullah alayh. And they want to continue, and they want to try to stop Islam, because Islam as an idea and thoughts and a system for implementing that idea and thoughts, it actually attacks directly the centrality of the Western system. It will just show the whole world that, look what you were. It's like the emperor with no clothes. Now, the ulama and these people, these brothers and sisters who are actually doing all of this work, and I emphasize sisters, because the attack on women and children is significant. And throughout the Muslim Ummah, there has always been major women scholars who have worked and have produced a lot for Islam. And the brothers and sisters are the safety valve for the Ummah. They shouldn't be a one-way valve bringing in the corruption. It should be the safety valve against the corruption entering the Ummah. And that's not what's happening. And the only way that the Ummah keeps quiet, or the Ummah is quiet, is because of decades of these ulama, and we've seen everywhere. Whether it was Bin Baz at the time of the Gulf War, or whether it was from Al-Azhar, giving some stupid ideas about Palestine and jihad, etc. and or even Bimbaya and others in the UAE and Shahrour, who basically wanted to cancel Sunnah totally. All of these people are are the ones who beautified kufr. And so that by doing this, what they've done is they've allowed the regimes to continue. Now, if you look at all of the statements that were mentioned about Syria and about the system and how it fell down and how it collapsed.
That's what I was going to ask you about,
Yeah,
because you're talking about the ulama, the activists, and so on. And Syria is a prime example where
yeah,
majority of them, not all of them, majority of them have jumped on the Blessed Revolution bandwagon, right?
yes,
And I'm not saying right or wrong here. I'm just saying they have. But obviously, if people are looking up to them, that's what they're taking on board.
absolutely. If you look at the Syrian regime, and this applies to all of the regimes everywhere, including the US regime, the they are sustained by centers of interest or centers of power who can see benefit to themselves from the continuation or the sustainment of a certain regime and how it works. Once that is no longer applicable, they get rid of it. And Bashar disappeared in a matter of days.
Mm.
It took what, 2.5 weeks after 61 years? From 63 to 24, 61 years. Disappeared. Like if it never existed. And
Yeah.
all of that fear and everything that you thought, well, where is the system? It's nowhere to be seen. It's like it evaporated, all gone. And it was sustained by people who obtained benefit. And once they realize there's no benefit anymore, they're all gone.
Mm.
And the and this is, by the way, the capitalist system. That's how it works. And and the powers are the power centers are certainly the industrialists and the mega investors, the trillionaires, etc., and people like that who control things. I mean, we've seen what Musk has done in the last election in the US.
Mm.
Now, the let me just go back to the ulama. Just there was a hadith I forgot to mention in Sahih Bukhari. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam says that إن الله لا يقبض العلم انتزاعا, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not take away knowledge by withdrawing it completely. Intiza' means he pulls it away. But he removes knowledge by taking away the ulama until there is such time that there is no ulama left, and therefore the people will then take ignorant people to be their leaders, and they will ask them, and they will give fatwa without any knowledge, and then they will be astray, and they will lead people astray. And Ibn Abbas radiallahu anhu said in his tafsir, there's an ayah, أَوَلَمْ يَرَوْا أَنَّا نَأْتِي الْأَرْضَ نَنْقُصْهَا مِنْ أَطْرَافِهَا. Do they not see that we take the earth and we roll it from its sides? That means its limits are getting smaller and smaller. And he said that the destruction of earth will be by the death of its ulama and the
Subhanallah.
good people. That was his ta'wil of this ayah. So now going back to the question of Syria, and I think Syria is critically important, and we have to recognize that the from everything that has occurred and everything that has happened, um, this was pre-planned, and there is no indication right now to say that this was not with the blessing of Western powers. And there's significant amount of evidence regarding um, many of the leaders of the different factions within the resistance and the movement that they are playing ball with the West,
Hmm.
funded by the West, trained by the West, cultured by the West. Now, whether that is the United States of America, who has controlled the Syrian opposition and all of the different units within that for decades, otherwise. The the intentions are only with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And we don't see any of that. What we hope and we wish to see is that the the movement in Syria recognizes the gravity of the work that they have to achieve and the work that they have to do and the importance of the all of the different aspects that they have to undertake, and that there are two things that have to be understood. Some people kind of think, oh, Islamists are going to come in and they're going to do this and they're going to do that and they're going to, and it's not. Well, hang on a minute. When we talk about Islam, we have to understand that there is a lot of lying and a lot of miscommunication and disinformation out there about what is truly Islam. And what people think Islam is, they straight away think about Taliban. But then
Yeah.
let me remind them that Taliban were actually created by the Americans. And it was, and by de facto, all of the billions that they were pumping into the Pakistani intelligence services, the military intelligence services. And I still remember to this day, um, after September 11, watching an interview with Benazir Bhutto and the US Undersecretary of State for South Asia. And the Channel 4 interviewer asked them, did you not create the Taliban? They both said yes. And
Very.
it's like, what else do you need? From the horse's mouth, as they say. So the fact is, we have to remember now that there are significant things in going on in Syria, where the intellectual needs to come in over the emotional, is we need to think out of the box, which is thinking according to Islam. According to Islam, we really should have a unity between Turkey and Syria, a unified Turkey and Syria. Maybe starting with a common defense pact. There are interests for Turkey in that because they certainly don't want, because they have a common enemy. The common enemy is the usurping entity. Why? Because the usurping entity is supporting the Kurds to have to keep on causing problems for Iraq and for southern Turkey. They are supporting the PKK to have its own separate entity,
Yeah.
which will carve out part of Turkey, southeastern Turkey, northern Iraq, and eastern Syria into a Turkish state, and parts of Iran also. So Turkey has an interest, and supporting a very strong military in Turkey, in Syria, means that it can actually bring peace and security and quell any intentions that the Kurds may want or have, which will protect Turkey. It will also protect Syria by making sure that everybody knows it's a stable place, it's strong, it can protect itself. Now, the question about the lands that these usurpers have taken or continue to take, there'll be time for that. That's not the priority right now. The priority right now is to build a state in Syria with the support of Turkey and in partnership with Turkey. The Turks have self-interests, the Syrians have self-interests, and the common ground between them is to protect that against a common enemy, which is the US and its manipulations in the area and the Israelis. Go ahead.
But I mean, what you're saying, I agree with that. But the signs that are being shown in the last week or so show something otherwise in
Yeah,
terms of, yeah, you're saying this is what should happen,
yeah,
but what it looks like is the opposite is happening.
yes. They're asking for all kinds of things. And that's why I'm saying they have an opportunity and they have to be very, very careful here. This whole pressure that's being put on them to be inclusive and to be diverse and to be all that. Look, nobody in Islam said that a Christian cannot be a minister in a Muslim state. The only exception are the sovereign ministries, interior ministry, the defense ministry, foreign affairs ministry, because in Islam, there's no foreign affairs ministry. I mean, it's the Ministry of Jihad. But anyway, so the thing is, it doesn't mean that they cannot be senior civil servants, they can't be advisors, they can't. No, we can take anybody and everybody. That's the diversity of Islam. I mean, look at America. You can't be a U.S. citizen unless you're born in America. That's a rule.
Hmm.
Why can't we have our rules? So the whole thing is the different. What we need to understand is that this definition of diversity or of inclusiveness, these are just sorry lies. There is no diversity. There is no inclusiveness. It goes up and down with the whims and desires of whoever is in power.
Yeah.
Can bring one law one year, the next government comes in and removes it. Whatever they wish. But us, we are guided by Allah and His Messenger. And therefore, whatever we do is not changeable. We have solid foundations upon which we act. And to us, acting upon those solid foundations is an act of worship to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because we then say, La ilaha illallah. Allah in the sky, Allah on earth. هو الذي في السماء إله وفي الأرض إله. So this is how we worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And therefore the pressures that they're under also demonstrates that, look, you don't know what you're doing. Which shows, again, going back to where the Ummah is and what we said before, there is a lot of corruption and a lot of misunderstanding of what is Islam.
But I mean, yes, I know what you're saying in terms of like, some of these guys, maybe they don't have the experience, and you're seeing in some of these interviews where they're being boxed into a corner and they kind of like compromising or giving weak answers. But these are people who have a background of promoting, supporting Islamic rule, caliphate, and so on. So it does, raise the question that it's not like they don't know. They've had a manifesto, they know, but now that they've got into a position, whether they're going to actually try to bring that into fruition, bring it into reality, or they're just going to go with the whims and desire of the West.
Because don't forget, to be able to establish Islam as a way of life and to incorporate that into a state, The Ummah has to be ready that that is what they want. They need to have clarity and understanding of what it means.
Yes, yes,
Rasulullah
yes.
Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam was asked by the Ansar, after the Bay'at al-Aqaba, send us someone to teach us Islam. So that factor has to be brought in. You're talking about 61 years of nothing. There is a lot of emotion about Islam. People now, you will see the mosques full, you will see all of that in place, you will see all of that. But it is very emotional. It needs time to actually build that momentum towards this is what we want to do.
And I think that point there, what you're saying is key, Brother Hammer, because when people are saying, look, they need to rule by Sharia, this, right? This doesn't mean that people are saying this has to happen overnight. What it means is now you have an opportunity. The obstacle, which was the Assad regime, has been removed.
Yeah,
You now find yourselves in positions of power. You need to gauge where the people are at, and you need to try to bring them to a level where they will understand what Islam is and what they should expect of you and what you should expect of them.
exactly.
But
Exactly.
if without that work, if now you are basically going on a civil state, a secular model, then you can't think in your head, well, let's try to play the game here. Let's make out as if we're moderates. Let's make out as if we're gonna just, you know, see ourselves as being no threat to the rest of the world. And undercover, we will try to change the people. But what you're actually going to be doing is you're going to be implementing kufr over the people, and to think that you're going to get any goodness out of that, it confuses people. It doesn't even make sense.
Absolutely. It does not. It does not. And it is what is needed right now is for them to create the environment for the thoughts and ideas of Islam to clash with the thoughts and ideas of the West. Let it out. Let the truth and the batil fight it out. Al-haq wal-batil. Let them face off and let's see.
Subhanallah.
And let the ummah be built in terms of its immunity, in terms of its intellectual prowess, in terms of its understanding, in terms of its dignity, that we have a belief, a system that can actually knock off anybody. And at the same time, we get to go to Jannah, inshallah ta'ala.
Ameen.
And so they have this opportunity to do this.
Yeah, 100%. No one can say they don't.
And they don't need to rush. They don't need to rush into anything. They've got time. They need to give people the understanding that, look, go and talk about Islam.
Hmm.
Let it happen. Let everybody bring whatever they want to bring. Let them bring their batil ideas of democracy, of freedom, of capitalism, of secularism. Let them bring all of their isms with them. Nationalism, whatever. Let them bring all of that with them. In the end, when I speak to people, and there's a huge community of people of Kurdish people in this country. The ones, of course, who visit the mosques and pray, and etc. Not the ones who don't. Not to say that the Arabs don't do that, but this, but the but specifically those will always tell you those are communists who are actually calling for separation.
Hmm.
I mean, they've come to me and say, "Ada Shi'i." They're communists.
Yeah.
So already they know, because in the end, there's no such thing as Syrian and Kurd. There's just a Muslim. La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah transcends everything.
Yeah.
And in understanding where we're at, and the position that we're in, we have to recognize that you're talking about building a state. That is not easy, especially when you got nothing. I mean, already they're talking about that the enclave where the Kurds are under the protection of the Americans, they've siphoned off $110 billion worth of oil from Syria and gas over the last, I don't know, 10 years or whatever they've had it. Where has that money gone? There is no accountability. There's no traceability. There's no audit. Nobody knows where this money has gone and to whom and where. Maybe it's like what Trump said. It's our oil, we'll take it. And the fact is that we have to understand Syria is so rich. Not only just normal oil and gas that you kind of dig into, but they've got shale oil.
Hmm.
They've got unbelievable sources of water, the rivers. They've got phosphate. They've got so many different things. I mean, some of the most beautiful marble in the world comes from Syria. It competes with Turkey and with Greece. So, there's so much. And I mean, if you look in every country you go, whether you're in Muslim countries, especially in the Gulf, maybe, and maybe here even in the West, there isn't a hospital that hasn't got a doctor or an engineer or a dentist that's not Syrian.
Hmm. That's true.
They are
That's true.
very, very well educated people. So the building a state, there is nothing better than for our brothers and sisters who are listening to us to just revisit again the Mithaq al-Medina, the Medina treaty that Rasulullah sallallahu had ordered as he entered Medina. That we are all one. Our peace is one and our war is one. سلمنا واحد وقتالنا واحد.
Subhanallah.
وإننا أمة من دون الناس. We are one nation. And all of those who come into us are from us. We will protect them and protect their belief and protect their money and protect their wealth and protect their children like we protect ours. And therefore, all of the people in Syria, whether they are Alawis or whether they're Christians, whether they're Maronite, whether they're whoever they may be, they're لا إكراه في الدين. So we will not, there's no reason to block them from being part of any civil service that has to be there or to serve the country. There's nothing in there. So,
Subhanallah.
yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I was just thinking. I've spoken to many people. I've recorded podcasts about Syria and stuff like this, and we've spoken from the point of view of whether there's something dodgy going on or whether this is something genuine. And there's also been a big rift within the ummah in terms of from an emotion point of view, where some people see this as treachery towards betrayal towards Gaza, and others see this as being something which is a blessing. And there's things like this we can discuss, but I think what the angle that you've mentioned within this episode in terms of, look, they're there now, they're in that position, this is what they should be doing. I think this is the real meaningful discourse, because if they are agents, they will expose themselves. And if they are sincere but don't know what to do, then this will also benefit them and it will also benefit the rest of the ummah. So I
Yes.
think this discourse is a lot more healthier than whether we kind of try to establish whether someone's a CIA agent or they aren't, because they will expose themselves. And unfortunately, over the last couple of weeks, if I'm going to be honest with you, the noise coming out of Syria isn't good in terms
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
the direction these guys are going to try moving
Yes.
into. And
Yes.
maybe this message will get to them, and awaken their soul or their iman, or just remind them, because they may just not know, they may not have the experience, so you give them the benefit of the doubt. However, I think definitely 2025 is going to show us more on where Syria is going to be, where it's heading, because this is a great opportunity. And a ayat of the Quran comes to mind where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, that He will, He'll remove the oppressors and He will give you the power, and then He will see what you do. You
وسينظر ما
know,
تفعلون. Yes.
and I think this is a reminder for those people. And the only last thing I'd say about the issue of Syria is the fact that there is there are some games being played. I mean, just say how they are showing how, I'm not going to say exaggerated, right?
Mm.
But how they are being showing the crimes of the Assad regime, but the noise about what's happening in Gaza is quite quieting down. It's gone down, and it also almost seems like the media are trying to show like, well, the Zionists ain't that bad. These lot have killed so many millions, and or it's only 45,000. It's funny how, well, it's not funny, but it's ironic how 5 6 months have gone on, and that
Yes.
that number of around 45,000 has stayed around 45,000 in Gaza, right? But I just hope that Muslims just are a bit more politically aware, astute as to what's happening, and not just be purely driven by emotion. And I think that's the sort of advice I would give to myself first and foremost, and to others.
I agree with you. And I think if you think about the whole play is about this removal of the axis of resistance, that it served its purpose. There's no need to have it anymore. So Hezbollah is gone. Syria has been dismantled as a staging for Hezbollah. But the key here, and of course, the resistance in Gaza has been severely hurt and degraded. And what we have to think about here very, very carefully is that Syria doesn't become or swap its role from under Bashar being a subcontractor to Iran to now becoming a subcontractor to Israel and the Americans. I mean, there's no difference. And if it does that and becomes a subcontractor to the US and to this entity, then it will become more like Sisi's regime under after the Arab Spring, and this might well end up being the Arab Winter rather than the hope of change that the Ummah actually is looking for and hopes for and expects. The the resistance we have to remember is of course was used and leveraged to serve Iran and serve Iran's purpose. And the situations as they exist there is that Iran once it actually wanted to change or to take a different direction, it sold them out. And the same thing with the Americans. When Bashar, their father, and the whole Bashar and whole Assad family are an American invention. We know that all the way back from 63. So what we've got to think now is about how the the world is now looking at least the Ummah, from that perspective of the world, is actually looking at Syria and hoping to see something that will give them an understanding of Islam could succeed in a governance perspective. It's not just a purely spiritual idea, but it is a political idea based upon a spiritual foundation. And therefore, where we are now with this axis of resistance is that there has been a consensus within the powers that control the Syrian file, let's say, the US and the Europeans, and of course with Turkey's involvement, is that Turkey has decided to take the file on. Now, Turkey is a secular state, and Erdogan is very much a nationalist. He has his own interests, but his interests could be served immensely if he works with Syria to actually bolster it and strengthen it.
Yeah, yeah.
Not only to get rid of the 2.5 million Syrian refugees that are causing him a problem, but also the issue around how they can then support the Syrian state to be strong enough that it actually works to be to the benefit of both. Not becoming a subcontractor to Turkey, but becoming a partner that they can actually support each other. I mean, for example, Turkey has got a massive energy issue. Why can't they exchange oil for services, oil for goods, oil for advice?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Even if it's on a nationalistic level, like you're saying, for self-interest.
They can find much common ground to be able to build that trust, to build those bridges. Because there will be those who will still talk about, Turkish Empire and all that stuff, right? However, who would you rather have? Your brothers from Turkey? Or maybe you found new brothers in Israel and the US. And that's going to be the core issue here. They don't have to fall over themselves. Now, whether they're actually playing this as a play or whether this is actually true, only time will tell. But the noise that's coming out, as you mentioned, is not very good.
So, brother, on that point, I think what we're gonna have to do is, in terms of, we said we're gonna speak about Bangladesh, Yemen, and Sudan. I think because of Salah time and stuff like this, I think
Yeah, yeah.
we're gonna have to leave that, park that up for a. It gives me an opportunity to get you back on sooner than later.
Inshallah.
But in terms of kind of like, I mean, to be honest with you, I'm sure there's linkages even between those issues and what we've been speaking about in terms of Gaza and Syria. So bringing it kind of like all together, and then we're looking at 2025, and this, we spoke about the Ummah being it going through this depression phase. Obviously, not in the illness point of view, but in a space where they're trying to identify what to do next. What do you forecast for 2025, and what should the Ummah be aware of in terms of plots and plans, and also maybe just some advice that you can give the listeners on what we can do in order to assist this struggle within our capacity, which everyone has different levels of capacity. But yeah, so it kind of like a mega blockbuster conclusion wrap up type of message is needed right now.
Yeah. Change is something that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has demanded. And to change the circumstances from Taghut to Islam. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said also, إن الله لا يغير ما بقوم حتى يغيروا ما بأنفسهم. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will not change the circumstances of people until they change their own circumstances. So it's got to start with us. And the way it starts with us is to think deeply about the causes and the reasons, and to understand what does Allah want from us. Allah wants us to worship Him. And worship is not just salah and siyam and hajj and zakah, and, that people really exert a lot of effort in doing. I mean, I know some brothers who, they'll drag you from your shirt to go into the mosque. And salah must be. Yes. But there are other also aspects that you should have the same prowess, the same effort, the same jealousy, the same zeal for as the obligations that must be there. And there is no greater obligation than the re-establishment of Islam as a way of life. Because the majority of the ahkam of Islam, the rulings of Islam, cannot be implemented without a ruler. Because nobody is going to implement them for you. The interests of the capitalists are in a completely different direction. Also, we have to remember that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created us to worship Him, and has made that all of these acts, and to act upon the orders and obligation and fulfill the obligations, and to abstain from the prohibitions that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has ordered, is worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And what we seek is Jannah. I mean, how long are we going to live here for? Nothing compared to the eternity with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so we need to continue to think and deeply research, the causes of all of this. And I think the Ummah has actually got to step one, which is, it is the regimes. The regimes need to change. Now, the difference is about how to change the regimes. So they've tried everything. They've tried mass demonstrations, they've tried elections, they've tried all kinds of things that they might think, or they may think that this is how we should be going about it. So we then need to think about the actual solution that everybody is actually putting to the side, which is, wait, we'll try some other things till we get to that one, because that one is the one where people have to give up a lot for it. And this is where Gaza comes to it. Look what they've given up to basically just want to have dignity of being able to live. So they've given up their wives, their husbands, their children, their livelihoods. They've given up, or they've given a sacrifice beyond anything for the Ummah to actually see. That's why it was al-Furqan. Because now in front of the Ummah, because al-Furqan is يفرق الحق عن الباطل. I mean, it cuts through. You could see it. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, فَجَعَلَ كُلُّ فِرْقٍ كَالطَّوْدِ الْعَظِيمِ, when Musa alayhi salam went to cross, and he made the two, كُلِّ فِرْق, that's each one is a فرق. Okay, so you could see the root between the two. Anyway, so what we then have to understand is that Islam is not just an idea and concepts for life, but it actually brought the methodology for how to do it. Otherwise, it will not be a complete religion. It can't be أتممت عليكم نعمتي أكملت لكم دينكم. It cannot have been perfected unless Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave us that methodology. If you say otherwise, then you're saying Islam is deficient. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala left something untold. That's just practically impossible. And Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam didn't spend 26 years. Allah could have given him a victory overnight. Could have brought down the ayat from the sky, and that was it. It is the method of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And so we have to work through those. So that's deep thinking, the research of the causes, the understanding of how to change, to then drive the, if the intellect is then sure that this is the way to do it, then the will is born. And the will can actually manage the emotions and force it through. You have no fear for rizq because you know Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala provides for you. You have no fear about death because you know the time will come. What are you going to do? Sit at home and wait for it? The iman in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is then ingrained in everything that you do. You have no fear. لن يصيبكم إلا ما كتب الله لكم. You understand qada and qadar. You understand qadar. That's it. You've got no fears anymore. And that is how the Sahaba conquered and achieved things that were beyond possible. We think of them when we read some of the stories and we think they're angels. They're not angels, they're human beings. But they understood how to do tawakkul. They understood all of those concepts I just mentioned. So then this thought, once it actually is understood and clear in someone's mind, this vision of La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah, of the state and what it looks like and what it should be, and the methodology is clear and the will is born, it exerts its influence over your emotions and directs it and becomes the fuel. That is then a burning fuel. You can't give that up. It's not going to happen once you have that clarity. And the Ummah need to go through this. We need to go through it individually, each one of us. We need to achieve this. It becomes burning. It becomes a flame that you can't quench. And that is then gives you that iron will. That gives you that power and that strength to achieve. And I think if we think of something in 2025, we want to achieve this.
Subhanallah.
And if the Ummah can start this journey now, where they're at, start this journey, then we'll climb that curve back again. We'll come out of that depression. We will start to think about what is it that we actually want that to be the state of Islam, and how it should do and what it should look like, and to be able to be proud of what we actually carry, and to be able to resist all of the influx of the batil thoughts and ideas. As Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said that, I will achieve it or I will perish achieving it.
Subhanallah. Sound advice, sound advice, bro. And like you're saying, I think this is what we need to be targeting. There has to be some, retrospective thought that we have to, think about ourselves. We always look at these issues around the world and we think, what are they going to do? What are they going to do? But you're part of the Ummah. The question is what can we do? What are we doing? But before that, I think, and just to add that, that curve that you mentioned, that sort of like that curve of being shocked and then going into depression. I guess this is the natural transition from one stage to
Yes.
another. So we're at a stage now where you either go one way or the other.
Yeah.
But without having that stage, you have no reason to change. So right now, the Ummah needs change. If everything was hunky dory, everyone was living well, even if it was nation states, people were living life, going on holidays, loads of wealth, loads of oil, right? There would be no need to change. But we can see that there is a need for change. So Alhamdulillah, I think that's some really, really sound and positive advice for people to sort of take away. So Jazakallah khair for that.
Inshallah.
And yeah, Jazakallah, Brother Hema, for coming on the podcast. I'm sure, like myself, many will benefit from this episode.
Inshallah.
I could honestly, without like sort of like as I say, blowing the trumpet type of thing, I could sit here and just listen and listen for hours. But the day is short. It's
Yeah,
winter time,
absolutely.
so
Yeah,
we
yeah,
have
yeah.
Salah.
Yeah.
So need to get to the Salah. So
Inshallah ta'ala. May Allah accept, inshallah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And Jazakumullah khair wa barakallah fikum.
Of course, and for everyone listening, please do check out Ustad Hema's website, well, YouTube channel, shall I say. I'll add the links like I did last time to the description. So check it out. And loads of community work is being done by Ustad Hema. And, I encourage you to check it out and benefit from that. And also, if you have liked this video, likes this episode, please make sure you like, subscribe, and share this with family and friends, inshallah ta'ala, and support the channel. We can't do much without the support from you all. So once more, and for the last time, Jazakallah khair to our special guest, and to everybody else. Until the next one, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu.